Ms. Murkowski. Aye. Mr. Sass. Aye. Mr. Cassidy. Aye. Mr. Booker. Nay.
I didn't start anything with the wife.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder, where every day's Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday, Tuesday, Casual Tuesday, Wednesday, Casual Hump Day, Thursday, Casual Thurs, that's what we call it, and Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Broadcasting live steps from the industry-ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On today's program, Digby, the great political analyst, blogger, historically informed commentator. She talks with Sam about the week's news in an interview that was recorded just yesterday, contextualizing everything. And then the great, the astute, the shrewd Michael regular Corey Pein joins us to talk about Mike. Jordan Peterson threatened to sue a critic for calling him a misogynist. I remember being told of this story before it broke.
Free speech, baby.
Jordan, I'm going to call you a lot of things in this book I'm working on. Would appreciate the pub.
You've been served.
You've been served. White House authorizes offensive cyber operations to deter foreign adversaries. Private tax collection raising much less than expected. What a surprise. And the U.S. maternal death rate is amongst the highest in the developed world. 18 states have not studied these deaths. And others tend to place the blame, of course, where it should clearly belong. The moms. Black children are 18 times more likely than to be tried as adults than white children. And the real question is, why are we trying any children as adults? An internal poll suggests that the GOP has lost the message battle on taxes. And Noam Chomsky visits Lula da Silva in prison in Curitiba in Brazil and says, it's a great feeling to meet one of the most important figures in the 21st century, as his stand-in continues to rise in the polls. All that and more on today's Majority Report. I, of course, am here along with super producer Matt Leck, on loan from TMBS, and super contributor / writer / video monitor / what's the fourth one we should put?
Ultra left polemicist?
Ultra left polemicist Jamie Peck.
Hey.
Brendan is on the move today.
But he did help produce the show.
He did help produce the show. He's a very great producer. You show up and everything is laid out for you, ready to go. We're all just like automatons here. We don't even need to think.
Big ups to Brendan.
Big ups to Brendan. The content is Brendan. I maybe am just too drained. I watch this because we like to run clips before we play them. I know that this guy is being an asshole, but I don't exactly know exactly the ways in the target of it or the ways in which he's doing this. I don't know whether he's making an age joke. He's certainly obviously dismissing the story about Brett Kavanaugh. It's a little confusing, but this is Congressman Ralph Norman of South Carolina, and he was speaking yesterday at an event at looks like a Kiwanis club, and he had this to say about Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Pleased to be here. Thank you for coming out. I thought I was going to be late. Did y'all hear the latest late-breaking news from the Kavanaugh hearings? Yeah. Ruth Bader Ginsburg came out that she was groped by Abraham Lincoln. I thought I was going to have to get back there. Folks, it's an honor for me to be here.
Fire. Guy should become a joke writer for the show. I mean,
Hey, you can get away with a lot if you're funny.
that's true. So Ralph Northam can't get away with anything.
Patreon.com/Ralph Northam.
Norman, excuse me. Ralph Norman. No, you spelled it right. I'm just is Northam's the Democratic governor of Virginia, I think, that I'm messing his name up with. But yeah, I mean, what I love though is that like with these like date references, it's like that's not we've said a million times, if someone like Brett Kavanaugh came out and said this happened 35 years ago, horrific event, I own it. Maybe it's even actually informed my views on juvenile policy, which it obviously hasn't, and restorative justice in general, which it obviously hasn't. We're talking about a completely different situation. What we're talking about is that today, it's what did Nixon say? It's the lie. It's the cover-up. Seldom is the event. Like, it's that. It's the lie and the cover-up.
What got Alger Hiss,
Yeah.
that's what got Nixon.
It depends what the event was, but
Well, of course.
generally speaking, yeah. I mean, that joke is dumb because, like, it barely even makes sense, right? Abe Lincoln is not nominated to the Supreme Court. It's also,
Yeah.
it's also like he's able to shoehorn in multiple kinds of misogyny into one joke, right? Because it's like making fun of survivors at the same time that it's like ragging on a woman for her age. So in a way, that's very impressive.
It was also impressive all the ways in which it wasn't funny.
That's the thing, is it says nothing. What the message of that joke is that this is a laughing matter, which is that's why he told it, right? Like
That's it.
He's preparing the room to move beyond that and not be like, oh well, we got this serious thing. It's like, well, we got this. Let's introduce some levity here because that's what's going to make it more comfortable for me to be here with you.
Yep. Ruth Bader Ginsburg. That actually is almost. That sounds like maybe current Dennis Miller material.
That does sound like.
Turns out then Ruth Bader Ginsburg with Abraham Lincoln. Bop bop bop.
That's all that was missing.
Yeah, if he did, it was a bop 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 bop. All right, it's great to be here.
See, then it would have been
Fran
funny.
brought some pot roast for us, and it's like gerbils on the Hindenburg. Am I right?
Mary Todd is requesting an investigation by the Pinkertons.
By the Pinkertons. The Pinkerton Camp Company.
But they're the deep state.
They're the deep. No, they would like the Pinkertons. I think they would like the Pinkertons, these guys. The Pinkertons are a major party of the Republican brand. If you like stories you hear on this show, we think you'll like the Sierra Club's new storytelling podcast, The Land I Trust. Season 2 of The Land I Trust is out now, bringing your storylines from across the western U.S., Season 2 of The Land I Trust is out now, bringing you storytellers from across the western U.S. who share their experiences in harvesting, protecting, and living with the 4 natural elements: water, fire, wind, and air. The series has 14 tales of individuals across the western part of the state. of the country, across the western part of the country, as they share their tales of climate change, clean energy, and everything in between. Each year, the Sierra Club visits a different region of the country for a new set of stories. Season 1, Stories from the American South, talk to musicians, families, farmers, and climate refugees, helping to move the South from a coal ash pollution to a brighter, cleaner future. You can listen to The Land I Trust. You can listen to The Land I Trust at beyondcoal.org/stories or at Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts. Check out Season 2 of The Land I Trust today. We're going to go to this interview. It's about 44 minutes or so with Digby that Sam recorded yesterday. And then we will be back with Corey Pein.
Are you ready for some Digby? Yeah. Are you ready for some Digby, 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 yeah. And a bit of hullabaloo, a bit of hullabaloo should do ya. How about some hullabaloo? Just rub it on ya. It's so good for ya. Digby's in the house. Digby, she's in the house. And a bit of hullabaloo, a bit of hullabaloo should do ya. How about some hullabaloo? Just rub it on ya. It's so good for ya. Hey kids, it's time to get ready for the one and only Digby.
We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report on the phone. It is always a pleasure to have on the program the proprietor of the Uber blog, Hullabaloo, and the writer from Salon.com, Heather Parton or Digby. Hi, Heather. How are you?
Hey, Sam. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm well. Now, we're recording this Thursday evening. We're going to play it on Friday, so who knows what could happen between now and then. But there's so much to talk about this week that it's a little bit hard to absorb. Of course, the big story is the Kavanaugh nomination. I think if we had spoken, well, maybe not this time last week, but pretty close, like right, a week from Wednesday or something, it was basically all she wrote. And then Ryan Grimm had a piece in The Intercept about a letter that had come to Dianne Feinstein in July from a woman who alleges that she was sexually assaulted by Brett Kavanaugh when they were both teenagers. In the room was this other guy, Mark Judge, who was a writer who has written such great hits like I Gave Up My Liberal Guilt When I Projected That a Black Person Stole My Bike, was one of his pieces, on top of a memoir about being completely blackout drunk during high school. And this woman subsequently said that she would testify. Where we are today on Thursday, I think most people know, Thursday night, she is in negotiations with members of the committee, apparently, to testify. Is that what your understanding of what the latest is as of, Thursday evening?
That's my understanding, that they're still in negotiations, that she is saying she's willing to testify under certain conditions, including her safety, which I think is reasonable, considering that apparently she's really been threatened quite seriously and had to move out of her house. So now, at this moment, and perhaps when this airs, we will know something more. We don't know yet whether or not they're going to agree to extend this artificial, completely arbitrary deadline they put up of Monday a couple of days so this woman can, secure her safety. We don't know whether or not they're going to do that. It would be absurd and, frankly, obscene if they don't.
Right.
This deadline is meaningless. It has absolutely, they made it up out of whole cloth. It's ridiculous. And, in fact, the whole rush on this is completely made up out of whole cloth. And it's one of the things that I think really sort of exposes what they're doing here in a way that I can't imagine is really going to work for them. I mean, the desperation that they have to get this particular right wingnut on the court immediately is bizarre to me, because they're going to. It's highly likely, 99% likely, that they are going to get some right wingnut on the court. Right? I mean, he's president unless something really astonishing happens. Donald Trump is going to fill this seat, and it's going to be filled with a right wingnut. Why they are going to this length to put this particular right wingnut on the court is the big question in my mind at the moment.
I mean, that is a fascinating question, right? I mean, because, look, I can understand why they wanted to do this within a week, because they don't want other women to show up. They want to not give this woman, look, all the worst of it is coming this week, right? Like, the death threats are going to start 15 minutes after people know her name. The most vulnerable she is to the limelight would be this week, right? It seems to me. And any other notion, if they give up this ghost that, like, we have to do this now, and there's notion that you can actually investigate this, I think that they must realize is problematic for them, right? Like, because they anticipated, we didn't see with Neil Gorsuch, let's put it this way. We didn't see Neil Gorsuch, people coming out saying he's great in a carpool, and maybe he isn't. Maybe Brett Kavanaugh is. But even still, there was no attempt to sort of say this guy's good for women in any way, or that he's nice to his women. Like, there was a particular strain, I'd say, to or flavor to the Brett Kavanaugh promotion tour that took place prior to this, right? It was all sort of geared towards, like, he's a nice guy, he's good with women, he's.
You're so right. It's so interesting, because looking back on this now, just over the last month or so, and in particular the last couple of weeks, in light of this, and I hadn't thought of this till you just brought this up. I mean, we did see, they brought out the girls' basketball team, and he's a great soccer dad and all this. But there's been an ad that's run on a loop on my cable. I don't know if it has on everybody else's, and it's this friend of his. She's not a legal expert, or she's just some woman who knows him. Very nice-looking woman, obviously somewhere around his age. And she goes, I've known Brett Kavanaugh for 35 years. And I just felt like I just had to say what a great, wonderful person he is. He's just a terrific guy. And I thought, even as I watched it the first time, I'm going, what is, that, I don't get this. I mean, it's, why do they feel such a need to come out and show that to have women testify to how nice he is? And that's not just about abortion rights, right? I mean, it can't be, because he's
odd.
good.
It's
odd.
It seems odd. Like, they were anticipating there's a problem here. Now, they may have anticipated this accusation in some way. Or maybe they were anticipating other accusations. I mean, maybe they were anticipating having more of a problem with Brett Kavanaugh's relationship with Kaczynski. I mean, that seems conceivable to me. The Democrats didn't seem to make as much of it as one would have thought. Mazie Hirono did, senator from Hawaii. But beyond that, there was no one else who really sort of like went at him about this. But it is very interesting. And so one gets the sense that this week is a function of, because look, if they're worried, right, on some level about just sort of, let's say it's the generic abortion thing, okay? If that would mean they're worried about suburban women, Republican women, right, in depressing their turnout. But if that's the case, then why not wait till after the election? Because no one they're going to put up there is going to be no one's going to get up there and say, I gotta say, this candidate, he is a champion for women's rights, right? He really, there's no one they're going to nominate who's going to be anything other than an obscure, a person whose desire to strip women of the sovereignty of their own body is obscured in some way. And so maybe they don't want to do this in the lame duck because they think the Democrats are going to win the Senate. Maybe, but I can't imagine. It's almost unimaginable to me that there's a scenario where Mitch McConnell is like, you know what? That's a bridge too far. I'm going to seem like a real hypocrite if we try and push through a nomination during the lame duck. I mean, that's not possible. And so this is really fascinating that they wanted to raise this happened so quickly. I think the idea is that they want to convince her not to testify, right? Not even because I may be wrong about this, but I'm trying to imagine a scenario where she testifies and maybe the Republican senators can all walk away and say not compelling enough to vote against him. We can't damage his whole life because of these just one charges from this woman. But that's, I would imagine, that's not too good of a look for a party that has a narrative built around it being misogynist to regardless of how she, so-called, I'm putting this in quotes, performs in testifying. It really is bizarre.
It's very bizarre, and it's even people like Ross Douthat from the New York Times, who is he's a very far right conservative who very, very much anti-choice, and even he has sort of pointed out that put this kind of guy, this sort of defending this guy under these circumstances kind of lends credibility to the idea that the anti-choice position, or in his words, the pro-life position, isn't really about fetuses. It looks more like it's about women. The rest of us are out here going, yeah, duh. You just noticed that, did you? But this is a big problem because even Republican women, who maybe they're even pro-life, they are absolutely bleeding from the Republican Party because of their loathing for Donald Trump and this kind of stuff. It's never ending. This guy has just sort of introduced this open, blatant disregard, outright misogynistic attitude and saying, hey, bring it. What are you going to do about it, ladies? That seems to be kind of the attitude here. And so you've got Kavanaugh here. It was a perfect opportunity for these Republicans to refute it by absolutely coming and saying, look, we love Brett. He's a good guy. He's been a great guy. But you know what? Under these circumstances in the Me Too era and all this, I'm sorry, we're going to respectfully ask that Brett withdraw his nomination and we're going to bring somebody else on. And if they were smart, they'd bring on a woman, right? That would be the obvious choice. And that would absolutely be seen as some sort of reassurance to all these Republican women who are running as fast as they can from the Republican Party to say, look, don't worry, we get it. This guy is the president is a pig, but we're seeing the light here and we're not, it's not going to be that bad. Go ahead, stick with us here. I don't know what else they can do, and yet they're not doing it. So this is not going to help them with their problem, which is a huge electoral problem. Republicans cannot win without white conservative women. They just can't. They are screwed. That they have to have those votes because they get no people of color. They get no, obviously no liberals. they just, a lot of college-educated white men are falling out as well. They've got a big problem, and this kind of blatant, just sort of, hey, what are you going to do about it? is just it's really surprising to me. I mean, I would have thought, and I think Mitch McConnell knew this because I think he was the one who did not want them to put up somebody like Kavanaugh, and Kavanaugh specifically, he argued against it because there are plenty of them who don't have his kind of paper trail, and they're just kind of boring white guys like Gorsuch, right? And the Republican, if it was about abortion, you make a good point. The Democrats could have made a big deal about Gorsuch, but it was not the same thing. There's Kavanaugh, and we've talked about this before, you and I have, about what a hardcore Republican operative he is. To choose him and to pick this fight, it just seems really bizarre to me that they are so far in the Trump tank. I mean, you have guys like Dean Heller, who's got a real race on his hand in Nevada, going, well, this is a little hiccup. You think Nevada women, or Republican women, think that this is a hiccup? I don't think they do.
Yeah, it is mystifying. But there's also an argument that before people interpret this as saying like it would be a good thing for the Republicans to confirm Brett Kavanaugh in light of this, and even if Dr. Ford testifies, from a political standpoint, it would be a good thing. I am of the mind that you delay. You delay. When you don't have the power, you kick the can as far down the road as you can and hope something turns in your favor. I mean, that's what happened in this case, right? And one doesn't know. Maybe the Democrats take control of the Senate, and during the lame duck, maybe, I don't know. Everyone gets hit with the flu and they can't vote. I mean, who knows, right? I mean, so you keep the door open as long as you can. So I, still count me as someone who is hoping that Brett Kavanaugh is not confirmed, and that
it is absolutely. I mean, I hope no one is interpreting my words as saying, "Gee, it'd be really good for us if
right.
he gets." It's not good for us. It's horrible for Democrats. It's horrible for humans. For
Frankly,
Brett Kavanaugh to be
horrible
confirmed.
For people who have not been born yet. I mean, because what we're talking about.
Exactly. I mean, it's an awful thing, and the Democrats are in a terrible position here because, regardless, there's no upside. Let's just put it this way: there's no upside to this. From the moment that Donald Trump was elected illegitimately, we knew that this was a possibility. We knew that we had one seat open, and then, who knew whether Anthony Kennedy was going to last, and he proved that he wouldn't. So this was always a possibility, and it's a horrible situation. And by the way, let's not pretend that, if the Democrats are able to somehow stop this Kavanaugh nomination, that means that the next person they put up isn't going to be just as bad
or
on
worse.
Every other level, or worse. Though it's hard to imagine anybody's worse than Kavanaugh, but it's certainly as bad or worse than Clarence Thomas or anybody else on the court. That is just the nature of this. We've seen, they've got the list, they're checking it twice, and McConnell is very much involved in this. They will try to put the most right-wing justice they can put on the court, and that is very, very, very right-wing. There's no upside for Democrats either way, and not even electorally, because, by the way, I think Democratic women are absolutely, they are as energized and electrified as they can get. This is just frosting on the cake. Democrats don't have any electoral upside to this. It's the Republicans who are making an electoral gamble, and it's really weird because apparently they think that they can own that, getting out that Trump vote and getting their boy Kavanaugh on the court immediately is a real electoral winner, and I don't understand that at all.
Yeah, I mean, I want to harp on this and cover terrain that I've already covered, but I interviewed Ryan Grimm and was just fishing around because in the back of my head I'm like, what? It seems to me electorally the way there was a poll, and I've mentioned this on the show earlier in the week. There was a poll that was it was an internal Republican poll. Now Every time you read anything that is supposedly an internal poll, you got to ask yourself, well, if it's an internal poll, why do I know about it?
Why am I reading it?
Right. I mean, I'm looking at Bloomberg Business Week right now, and it says a private survey shows, and I'm like, well, it's obviously not private. Somebody wanted me to know about it, and I'm not sure exactly why. But and not me, obviously. I'm talking all of us. But it said that Republican voters are not engaged in this midterm election, in part because Donald Trump has said there's probably going to be a blue wave, so they don't think the stakes are a red wave. So they're believing him, and they don't think that they need to come out. And they also don't feel like there's any stakes to this. And there are stakes to this because not only, we talk about impeachment and we talk about maybe the idea that even if the Democrats win the Senate, that the Republicans will put that fifth guy on. Clarence Thomas is 70, and there's been a lot of talk over the past couple of years. This is a guy who's not super excited to be on the court anymore. I think there's if you look at the way that Ginny Thomas conducts her business, there seems to be a real desire to make some money in that household. And, I suspect that if the Republicans retain the Senate, Clarence Thomas is going to announce his retirement, at the end of this term, if he waits that long. It's not inconceivable to me that he wouldn't announce it sometime in April or, March, and they start to look for somebody, and then we have these hearings again next summer. If the Democrats take the Senate, then it's a much different story, right? He's going to hold on for a couple of years and wait and see if Trump gets reelected. And so there's some stakes here because he's the, that fifth vote. I mean, Anthony Kennedy was a swing on some things, but not all things. But in the interim, we'll probably see the loss of abortion rights, if not overturning Roe v. Wade, certainly a loss of abortion rights over the next 2 years. People should understand that every time you see one of these pieces of legislation passed by, Indiana or Alabama or, Tennessee or Mississippi or something like this that are clearly unconstitutional in terms of abridging a woman's right to an abortion, understand people are attempting to get these things brought to the Supreme Court, and they're just waiting for a court that's amenable to them. And so this is, there's a lot of wheels in motion below the surface.
Oh, absolutely. And, look, even if they were to go a whole hog and overturn Roe versus Wade, they could go all the way, of course, and decide that it's constitutional to completely ban abortion nationally. But far more likely is they're going to do what they've always said they were going to do, which is to send it back to the states, right? They'll make the decision about which women have a right to, control their own bodies. And all those things that are in the states, right, all those laws that are in the states would suddenly become law. I mean, there's a whole bunch of them, states that already have, abortion bans on their, on the books that would become law if the constitutional right is overturned. So, and look, I don't think anybody should fool themselves. This is going to happen. I mean, this court with Kavanaugh as the fifth vote. I mean, Anthony Kennedy was holding on just with chewing gum and, baling wire onto a right to abortion with Kavanaugh on the court, and probably anybody who replaces him, by the way, that Donald Trump nominates. This is going to happen. Roe versus Wade, we've said for many years that this was coming, and it's here. If they get this fifth seat filled with a Donald Trump right-wing, Federalist Society judge, no matter what he's saying right now. And by the way, Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski know this very well. So do anybody else that considers themselves pro-choice in the Republican Party. They know what they're getting, and the fact that Kavanaugh hasn't come out and said it outright means nothing. They know very well that he is going to make that vote, as will any other nominee that they bring up. Donald Trump promised it on the campaign trail. Whoever I put in will be pro-life and will vote to ban Roe versus Wade. That's just the reality of this situation. It's terrifying. It's one of the many terrifying things about Donald Trump winning the election. But here we are. And I don't think we should fool ourselves into thinking that is a battle that is not going to be ongoing for a very long time. Now, whether they do it all at once or they do it piecemeal, I suspect they'll do it piecemeal because actually support for abortion rights is a majority in the country. They would be going very much against what most people believe about that subject.
Well,
but they're going to do it.
Yeah, they'll do it. It'll be all of a sudden trap laws are okay. It'll be a question of giving the states the less scrutiny on laws they pass that abridge the right in some way. All right. Well, let me just ask you this, because I don't know if there's been a lot of footage of the Anita Hill hearings that have been played for obvious reasons. I remember these hearings quite well. It actually, I started taking pictures of my television at that time and making refrigerator magnets. That's just a little bit of a little quirk people can know about me. But and back when I was starting sketch comedy with Cross Comedy in Boston, we did. I remember a 45-minute sketch of these hearings, because it was incredible to watch a panel of men and sternly. There was, I don't think I was aware of the term at the time, and there was no notion that Anita Hill was doing anything other than expressing how she had been victimized, but there was like a quality of slut shaming. Like there was a quality from these guys, like, how dare you make us say things like long dong silver or whatever that guy's name was. And, and we're going to make you say the words pubic hair on a Coke can. And, it seems to me there is a lot of reason for these guys to be concerned about questioning Dr. Ford in public. And we should remind people that on the Republican side, still no women on that committee. And it's going to be a little bit awkward, I think.
Well, I think it is too. Now, there's some talk, and maybe this will have been resolved by the time the show is on, but there's some talk about not having the senators do the questioning, to either have counsel for the two people, Kavanaugh and Ford, which I think is really weird, or have staff, legal staff on the committee do the questioning, or maybe just pick a couple of senators who are at least offensive, maybe have Ben Sass, the cute young guy, do it rather than Orrin Hatch, who, by the way, was the guy who said long dong silver in the original Anita Hill hearings. Right. He's the one who did it. I'm sure he's longing to do something like that again. And maybe on the Democratic side, you could have, people like, Kamala Harris, who is a skilled prosecutor, someone who could do the questioning on the Democratic side. We'll have to see how that works out. But what you say about the Anita Hill hearing is absolutely true. The slut-shaming that went on there was absolutely horrifying. I remember Alan Simpson. He was from Wyoming. I don't know if people remember. He turned up a couple of years ago
Simpson
with the...
Bulls, yep.
Yeah, with the Erskine Bulls, Simpson Bulls Commission. Well, he was one of those folksy guys, kind of like John Kennedy is today, or Lindsey Graham, who, like to, sort of talk like he was, somebody from the 18th century.
Right.
Anyway, he came in. I remember him saying, boy, I've got things coming over the transom about this lady. You don't even want to know what these people are saying about her. He says this in the hearing. I remember watching it. I was riveted. In fact, I stayed home from work to watch the whole thing. And, it was grotesque, the slut-shaming. Now, I don't think that will happen this time. What appears to be their strategy, and this is kind of flowing all through the sort of right-wing fever swamps and in certain circles, even in the Washington Post today by Kathleen Parker, suggesting that this woman is too addled to know who it was who attacked her that night, that it's a mistaken identity. It's a little lady. She's got good intentions, but she's a little bit crazy. And so what this goes to, there's David Brock, actually, who was one of the original sort of strategists in the Anita Hill situation, and then wrote the book The Real Anita Hill, which he later apologized for in 2000.
Wait, I want to be clear on this, because I don't think a lot of people realize this. David Brock was one of the strategists on the right. He was one of the people should understand this, that David Brock got his start in politics by being one of the primary architects of the attacks on the Clintons back in the day. I mean, it had this. I don't know if people remember that in the way that you and I probably remember that. And so continue. He said.
Yeah, well, he wrote the book called The Real Anita Hill, which was this total just smear job on the woman. It was after the hearings, but it was a way of trying to rehabilitate Clarence Thomas after he was confirmed. And David Brock apologized for it in 2000, so it's not like it was something, he has had a full change of heart and ideology and is now, on the other side and has been for well over a decade. But in any case, he can't, the term that they coined for it was a little bit nutty and a little bit slutty. Now, in the Me Too era, saying slutty probably isn't going to work because, I think that having these guys or even an attorney or another woman on the, some woman staffer, they don't have any women senators, so they'd have to get a staffer.
They will.
If this woman was promiscuous, well, that would be a problem. I think they're going with nutty. I think that they're going to go with nutty, that she's a little bit strange, that she's got little memory problems, that she's not really reliable, that she's a little flighty, maybe a little hysterical, doesn't really remember what happened. Come on, honey,
Right. Or it could even be.
Time.
It could even be like, and I will say this: if they don't have senators do the questioning, I would be willing to bet everything I've ever owned or ever will own that they find a woman to do the questioning on the Republican side. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. But it's going to end up being, you were 15, you were terrified. It must have been a horrible situation to be in. It is completely.
How many drinks did you have? Were you drinking that night?
I think it could be. Maybe you were drinking. You were at a party. I think it's going to be like everyone can completely understand that you wouldn't know who these people were. And that's probably going to be their attempt. Now, I don't know how many times they can say that and how many times she can go, well, I knew who it was. I knew this kid and I followed this guy's career. I didn't make it up 20 years later, but we'll see. I mean, it's going to be.
Well, it occurs to me that there's something interesting here that I just thought of, which is that this woman is a psychologist.
Right.
She's not just another woman. So it's possible that she could even bring her professional knowledge to bear there and say, well, look, studies have shown that women, and this is true, too, by the way, that people who have a traumatic experience like that, their memory is actually pretty sharp of things like the identity of the person who perpetrated it. It's not common for them to be mixed up about that. I mean, maybe her professional credentials could actually work. I mean, in a normal situation, you'd have other people testify to that, right? You'd bring in some specialists and experts and all that. And by the way, you would certainly bring up the other guy she accuses of assaulting her in the room that night, this pig that is the friend of Kavanaugh's, who's written, reams about what a drunken frat house atmosphere that school was and how they were all drunk and throwing up and God knows what else. And there's a lot of cruelty and hostility to women in in the stuff that he's written as well. they would bring him up too. But he's refusing, and I guess that's okay. She can't refuse, but Mark Judge, that's the guy's name, he can refuse. But in a normal situation, you would have other witnesses that you would bring on to sort of go through whether or not it's reasonable to believe that she knows what she's talking about under these circumstances. But of course, they've decided that it's just going to be the two of them. So maybe she's going to have to be her own psychologist expert in that situation.
All right, let's. So everything is beyond what we've talked about is conjecture. The only other thing that's extant, and I haven't heard anything of it, was the reporting that the report was Ryan Grimm had another story about the lawyer who first blew the whistle on Judge Kaczynski out in California, who at the time everybody thought this lawyer was a lunatic. And ultimately was vindicated because Judge Kaczynski turns out to have been a grade A level sexual assaulter creep, and we had this. There was a hint of this yesterday, or I guess today, Thursday. The story of Amy Chua, I guess it is, and her husband, who were coaching a particular woman who was looking for a clerkship, and there was some like overtones, allusions to like he likes a certain look, he wants a woman who is outgoing, and this woman had said she had heard stuff about Kaczynski and stayed away. She had heard from Kavanaugh that there was some stuff, but not so much to dissuade her, and so I think there's probably a concern that there's somebody out there who says, I know Brett Kavanaugh knew about Kaczynski because I blankety blank blank. Now, for someone to come forward in that circumstance, they are obviously going to be in the legal profession, right? They are probably in the federal judiciary. They may have to go in front of a colleague of Kavanaugh's professionally.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a very risky proposition, and those people may be sitting back going like, making a calculation like, I don't want to do this if I'm not going to, if he's going to end up on the court, because then I'll have done this to a Supreme Court justice, as opposed to a guy who's not a Supreme Court justice and, who the senators rejected. So it's unclear if we're going to hear from those two federal judiciary employees that this lawyer supposedly represents. So that is extant. We may hear things over the weekend. We may see some compelling appearances on television. Part of the reason why they're negotiating is probably to get her not to appear on television before she testifies. And, her team will make that assessment if it's worth it or not. Because I'm not convinced that her going on television, her going on 60 Minutes, her going on the Sunday talk shows, whatever it is, won't have the same sort of damaging effect. Like, go ahead, vote for him. I just gave my testimony to the American public. Brett Kavanaugh hasn't a chance to respond, and that's because you guys insisted on having this on Monday. I mean, the next couple of days are going to be fascinating in that regard. And we should just say before we go that one of the things that Donald Trump likes about Brett Kavanaugh is his perspective on presidential powers and whether or not he could be subpoenaed. And at the beginning of the week, it may seem like a year ago, Paul Manafort's plea deal cooperation agreement was, basically made public, more or less. And this guy is wrapped up. There's no wiggle room. They can fire Kavanaugh. I mean, they can fire Mueller. But Manafort, there's all the stuff is lined up, ducks in a row to get him, to have him liable in at least one or two states, it seems to me, by a state AG. And, Tish James in New York State, I'm sure the first thing she would love to do is to make sure that Donald Trump doesn't get away with firing Mueller by, bringing up charges on Manafort. That story is like sort of weirdly hovering in the background. Like, I feel like any other week we would be talking nothing but that.
Oh, we would. I mean, it was huge, actually, and the right has this whole alternate narrative that they're on, that they're trying to push so they can give Trump some kind of justification for ending the investigation after the midterms, which Lindsey Graham and Grassley have both sort of indicated, winked and nodded anyway, that it's fine with them if Trump does it after the midterms. And just before we got on the phone, it was reported that Michael Cohen has spent over a dozen hours with Robert Mueller now. And I don't think Mueller's wasting his time with this guy. And there's no agreement, no cooperation, no plea, nothing. I think it's just purely this is voluntary, and they're talking to him. I think Trump is in a panic, and that certainly is the reporting that he's in a panic. He released this classified information on the Carter Page stuff and this whole crazy conspiracy story this week. He released classified information, which he hasn't even read, purely on the basis of what, the people he trusts, who he names as Lou Dobbs and Sean Hannity in the interview he gave to The Hill this week. I mean, this is becoming, and in fact, having Kavanaugh on the court, and perhaps this is why, really, when you get right down to it, they are so adamant that it be him and not one of the dozens of replacements they could easily put in. Is because Kavanaugh is a guy who has pledged his loyalty, and he's a good party man, and he's a good, conservative movement operative and a character assassination, and he has probably let everybody in the place know that he will back whatever the president's play is if any of these cases make it to the Supreme Court, and he will do it under the auspices of, presidential power, which he has, he can. There is a judicial basis or a legal philosophical basis for doing this, and he's probably a guy that Trump now has sort of assumed is his best chance.
Let me just I want to before we wrap up, I want to just put a finer point on that. All right, so that people can just to get a sense of this. People forget this. Neil Gorsuch, there was a moment where he said, and maybe he just said it to a senator, but maybe he said it somewhat publicly.
Blumenthal. He said Blumenthal.
Yeah, it was Blumenthal, where he said, I think it's inappropriate to go after judges because of their ancestry, something to that effect, right? And which showed a certain amount of, at least some measure of willing to not completely toe the line. Brett Kavanaugh got up in front of everyone in the first statement he ever made as a nominee to the court and said, Donald Trump, like one that would have almost sounded like just bizarre to even say about any president. He spoke to more people about this nomination than has ever been in the history of presidents, or something to that effect. Something so ostentatious that it was so clearly a suck up to Donald Trump. It was almost like Donald Trump wrote it and gave it to him. I mean, that's the way that the diction sounded. And this is the same,
like the doctor report that his doctor put out.
Honestly,
it was like that.
Exactly. And so, just to get a sense of where this guy's integrity is. This is the same guy who made that face, Kasowitz, when he was talking about his best friend's law firm. His best friend, who had been there for 9 years. That is like grade A. This is the type of stuff you warn people about, right? I wouldn't get too friendly with this dude, or certainly,
right.
That type of stuff is. So just to, if it's not enough to talk about what he did to Monica Lewinsky, forcing her to say, count how many times that, anybody, never mind the president, but anybody ejaculated, in their mouth, that type. This guy went through. People should go back and read the questions that he asked Monica Lewinsky. He was also considered the designated leaker. That reports in the national memo. Don't know why that didn't get as much attention. This guy is a despicable character, and it's quite possible. It's, for a lot of people, it would be sort of, I feel like, a little bit hyperbole that they went in there and said loyalty pledge to the president. This guy, I wouldn't put it past him for a moment. And so it could very well be that Donald Trump has made it clear it's this guy I want. And if you don't get me this guy, I'm going to go, I'm going to go rogue in terms of the midterms. I mean, who knows, right? I mean, because we've got to know that Donald Trump cares about his future not in prison, or his kids' future not in prison, far more than any type of, conservative legal worldview.
Oh, God. He doesn't even know what a legal worldview is. No, this is all about self-preservation for him. And, and he has sort of this grandiose idea that he's, shaping the country for the next 50 years, which is true, but not, because anybody's doing it because of him. This is purely a conservative movement accomplishment, is getting these people on the courts and packing the lower courts as well. I mean,
Yep.
It's not just the Supreme Court. I mean, McConnell is just, he is ramming them through one after another. And that is Trump's legacy, but he can't really take credit for it since he doesn't even know.
And
what
it doesn't
these
mean
people
anything
do.
to him. It doesn't mean anything.
No, it's not nothing to him. But the idea that he has obtained loyalty from this guy, I really believe you're right, and I don't think Kavanaugh would hesitate. This guy is a Republican operative. He's not, as Brian Schatz said on Pod Save America. He said, he's not like Justice Gorsuch. He's not like Justice Roberts. He's not even a justice. He's a Republican activist, a Republican operative posing as a judge. And that is exactly what he is. And it's the perfect person for Trump, right?
Yep.
I mean, this is the guy that will do whatever it takes, that could easily be the one that they could bring in and say, hey, Brett, babe, just tell this guy, give him, get down on your knee, kiss his ring, tell him you're there for him, and, that is what he needs to know. And I have no doubt that one way or the other, whether it was that overt or a little bit subtler, it can't be too subtle or Trump wouldn't understand it, but, something to indicate that this guy was there for him and that he would hold the line on anything that came before them, because Donald Trump is all about self-preservation. Tim O'Brien, the journalist who also was sued by Donald Trump years ago, and won his case. He says there's only two modes. Trump doesn't have a strategy. He has two modes. One is self-aggrandizement, and the other is self-preservation. That's it. That's
Right.
all he is. And I think that that's true. And in this case, what he's looking at right now is self-preservation in big time, especially after that Manafort plea.
Yep.
And, that locomotive, that Mueller locomotive is bearing down hard, and he's probably desperate to make sure that he's got as many backstops around him as he can to try and preserve, his actual future, much less his presidency.
Heather Parton, Digby, always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Sam. Have a great weekend.
You too.
Self-preservation or self-aggrandizement? The two poles of excellence. Digby finally has a song.
She does, and if you just give me a moment, I'll look up who sent that in.
Yeah.
This was Don. Wait, does he have a name that he goes by?
Don.
And I have...
He's just a guy named Don.
Well, no, he says he has more stuff on Amazon. Hot Cologne and Precarious Neutron.
Hot Cologne and Precarious Neutron.
I
Fair
believe
enough.
that's it. I hope that's it.
Sounds good. All right, we are going to take a brief break, and we're going to return with a MB Friday regular, Corey Pein. welcome back to the Majority Report. Michael Brooks here. Joining us now is Corey Pein. He's the author of Live, Work, 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 Die. Corey. And of course, also the host of the Great News from Nowhere podcast, which people should subscribe to on Patreon if they haven't already. I do that too. Knowledgeable minds do that.
Thanks for the plugs right off the bat. I'm always happy to come on Majority Report and the Michael Brooks Show. I've yet to be invited on Literary Hangover. I might have been invited to Antifada, but it didn't work out.
You are welcome anytime, Corey. But we haven't totally figured out our setup for phone interviews yet, so we might have to do some work on that. Or next time you're in New York.
Yeah, I don't know when that will be. I do have some good news about the book. I recently signed. Is this too self-promotional?
No, go for it. You ready for this? Hold on.
I recently signed what is known.
Go ahead.
That was awesome.
Yes, sir.
I'm pumped now.
You should be pumped.
Elevated my mood. I recently signed what is apparently known as a shopping agreement. So there is hopes to develop Live, Work, Work, Die into some kind of televisual series. So if any of your audience has ideas about people who are directors or producers or other sorts of talent.
I have ideas as to people who could be on both, I guess, acting and writing staff.
Yeah, I think I need to be on the writing staff.
Yeah.
Same. You should call it Silicon Valley.
Part 2.
That's a great idea. I'm sorry, my kitten has a Gatorade bottle that's making a lot of noise.
I was wondering what that was. I was wondering. So, Corey, I'm writing a book now, and I'm not trying to flog it too much, although it is starting to, the timeline is starting to accelerate and dilate on that a little bit more. And I don't consider, I can write. I've published in certain places. I'm not a writer the way you are. But I remember talking with you, and without giving away any trade secrets, there was a big process that you had to go through with this book. And of course you had a, good big publisher and everything. And the lawyers take a look at everything before something gets published.
Yes, they do.
They take a good look. And, I'm writing a book that really actually, ironically, and it's funny that I have to say ironically in today's world, but it deals with this. It's not just a critique of the intellectual dark web. It's actually an attempt to understand the moment we're in and why it would facilitate something like the intellectual dark web. And of course, it's going to involve critiques of these people. It's not going to involve any, of course, made up stories or anything. It's going to involve dealing with their ideas. I'm sure, of course, I have no doubt that, Sam Harris will say he was taken out of context, but that seems to be like some type of Gestalt response that he has to just basically anything that's even mildly critical. So he'll do his thing. But there's an interesting trend here with Jordan Peterson, because Jordan Peterson got on the map through sort of basically saying that I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna respond to people's gender pronouns, at least in a compulsory manner, and I'm willing to go to jail over this. He had this whole kind of public melodrama about this Canadian directive that he was responding to, and definitely radically overreacting to. And he also was saying that speech codes of any kind sort of close the infrastructure of free speech. They limit the cognitive and linguistic territory. And what's been interesting in the last couple of months is that Jordan Peterson seems to have no problem limiting certain kinds of cognitive and linguistic territory, and those involve anybody who's critical of him. He called several months ago, he sued a university in Canada, basically professors who had criticized him. He sued them for a conversation that they had in a leaked tape where, I mean, the professors did not come off well in the tape at all, but it's a bit of an incredibly astonishing thing to sue over, especially for a self-proclaimed free speech advocate. And now Jordan Peterson has sent a letter to an author by the name of, scrolling it down for me.
I've got it here. Yeah. Kate Mann.
Kate Mann.
M-A-N-N-E.
Yes, Kate Mann. Who?
And she's a professor at the Sage School of Philosophy at Cornell. So she's a...
I'm defenseless against that kind of female insanity.
So basically, and you might ask yourself, like, did she, as I said, like, did she make up a story about him? Did she say that he killed somebody? Did she do something like that? No, she called him a misogynist in Vox. And
not even
not even that. Explain what she did. Yeah, go ahead.
I actually have. So I learned about this story. He filed this, or his lawyer did, back in June, but I just learned about it, I think, with most people this week with an article in The Cut.
Right.
By Aaron Carmen. Right. And they got a hold of the letter that Peterson's lawyers sent. And the first, it's very short, so I'll just read some of it, if you don't mind. I think it's pretty entertaining to get the source material.
Can you do it
here.
In the voice?
It addresses not just... I can't.
No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Voice.
Go, no. Do it.
This would be Peterson's lawyer voice.
All right.
Okay, so it's addressed to Professor Kate Mann at Cornell, to Professor Derek Paraboom, the chair of her department at Cornell.
Wow.
Sean Illing, the Vox reporter who interviewed Kate Mann, and Vox Media.
I know Sean Illing. Sean Illing, good guy, Majority Report listener. Love him.
And it's fun.
Fake news.
It's which is just, it's okay. First of all, it's just really unusual that I can understand including Vox on there if you're going to be pursuing a libel or slander claim, but adding the chair of her department is just a bullying tactic.
Oh, yeah.
Total scab move.
Yeah, okay. So then it's this letter serves as notice of action, blah, blah, blah. On June 6th, the following libelous statements by Professor Mann were published on the website below. And then it lists some quotes from the professor that upset Jordan Peterson. And they are, I also think the way Peterson cherry-picked a few more dignified-sounding sentences from the diary of one of the Columbine killers, Eric Harris, was downright dishonest. I suspect that for many of Peterson's readers, the sexism on display is one tool among many to make forceful, domineering moves that are typical of misogyny. So she didn't actually call him a misogynist. She just said it was like misogyny.
Lawsuit.
Then,
you're sued.
Then she does go on to frame one of his quotes as classic straight-up misogyny. And then Peterson measures himself by the size of his celebrity, the idea of winning or dominating others.
Sorry.
As an end to itself, eyebrow-raising, authoritarian-sounding. And the last statement they include, it doesn't seem accidental that his skepticism about objective facts arises when it's conveniently anti-feminist. And then there's lawyers from Levitt LLP demand, please...
Jew lawyers, it's IQ, science.
Please immediately retract all of Professor Mann's defamatory statements, have them immediately removed from the internet, and issue an apology in the same forum to Mr. Peterson. Otherwise, our client will take all steps necessary to protect his professional reputation, including but not limited to initiating legal proceedings against all of you for damages, including punitive damages.
Oh man, how do we not have the Jerky Boys sound drop for that? Sue everybody.
Oh, and he says...
And the people you associate with, I'll be suing them as well.
Cornell University is vicariously liable for Professor Mann's defamatory statements. Now...
What does that mean?
Well, and then the last words, as the Supreme Court of Canada has made clear, liability can be imputed to employers due to damages caused by their employees and or officers.
Yeah, they're platforming the hussy.
They're platforming her.
So... this really just gives up the ghost. I mean, the idea that you can stand up as a free speech warrior and then have your personal attorney send around these kind of bullying letters to get articles removed from the internet and replaced with fawning apologies is like as far from free speech as you can get. And this stuff does have an effect on media organizations. I mean, in the article that interviewed Sean Illing, basically he says that his employers and their lawyers laughed it off because it was a joke. I mean, there's nothing actionable in the U.S. or Canada about what the woman said.
Right. I mean, there's literally nothing. If this was the standard, basically you couldn't write a critical book review, you couldn't do anything. Yeah, right.
That's what I'm saying.
Exactly. So we're establishing new linguistic territory where you can't criticize my books.
He wants to sue about the stuff that free speech is for.
Yeah, well, I think that's the kind
I also suspect that the fact that she's at Cornell and he's stuck up in the frozen north is part of it too, because here's somebody from a arguably more prestigious university who's knocking him, and he's in the philosophy department too, if I recall.
No, he's in
right?
psychology.
I mean, this is
psychology.
He's psychology.
Yeah, psychology. But I think your broader point that he's lower than her in the dominance hierarchy and should keep his mouth shut stands.
And a woman at that.
Yeah, but a woman who's at a better college, so it's a tough road.
Who
there.
knows? That's chaos.
That's chaos. Chaos at Cornell, lawsuit edition. No, but I think what you're saying, it's like, yes, it's not just like the obvious giving up of the ghost here in terms of like, this guy and this whole silly movement is constantly banging on about free speech. And now like, this is one of the only maneuvers available where one can really shut down free speech, right? Like this isn't, oh no, I was criticized for saying something that's against my free speech. This is like actually literally you're making an analysis of my work that I don't like. I'll sue you. So I think, that's one part of it. And it does give up the ghost, but it also really shows that like, not only is it giving up the ghost, but I think, and I don't think this is a good thing, because I am probably more on the like, and certainly when it comes to legal and policy decisions, I'm pretty strong on, free speech protections. I don't think that there's an advantage for the left in any type of a long-term way for sort of like speech limitation, right? And I also don't think that speech limitation is necessarily how you win the war against the people that, forward fascistic or any other types of, disgusting ideas, right? But it's just striking now that like, I guess that these people like Jordan Peterson are not only are they giving up the ghost, they've turned the idea of free speech that actually has some, at the very least, agree or disagree, an incredibly important intellectual history and has served a really important role in our society and also in some very left movements, into just like a punch like, oh, that guy's talking about free speech, there's a fascist, right? They have totally toxified the brand of actually a very admirable.
Well, isn't that what
tradition.
Fascists would want to do?
Yes.
With free speech. I mean, as an actual concept versus
exactly. Well, there's we've played Richard Spencer, 9 months ago or so, saying like, well, of course we don't actually support free speech, but it's a weapon in our arsenal. And I'm not saying, before people freak out, I don't think Jordan Peterson and Richard Spencer are the same characters, but it's like obviously there's similar water that they're in, intentionally or unintentionally, and this reveals it. You can't, banging on about basically like, I will go to the mat to make sure that I don't respect, identity categories of students, but you can't criticize my book in Vox? What?
There's another similarity that I immediately thought of when I saw this story, because the last Nazi rally that I went to. I might have mentioned it on this. I think I just told friends about this. I don't think I even mentioned it on my show. But there was this guy that was there, young guy, sort of like typical college age, alt-right, Pepe kind of troll. And I recognized him from several of these previous rallies. But at this one, he was presenting himself as a sort of young, progressive criminal justice reform advocate and pressing his line on anybody who would listen, including all the national press that was there to cover this thing. And, he came up and talked to me, and I was like, yeah, that's fine. I'll hear you out. I'll hear your spiel as long as I can record it.
Right.
So I was recording him visibly, and at the end of his spiel, his first example for criminal justice reform was the Bundys and how maltreated they were. And I'm like, okay, I see what's happening here.
It's an interesting starting point.
When he at the end of it, he's like, okay, what do you think about what I said? Like, man to man. I was like, man to man? Are you kidding with me? Like, he's like, no, really, man to man. Like, how are you going to spin this? And I'm like, okay, well,
you're gonna go on the Majority Report and make fun of me with Michael, man to man.
The guy's always laughing in the background.
I said, okay, man.
I find his Nation of Islam Obama a little problematic.
Yeah, super problematic impression. Man to man. Man to
okay, man. I've seen you at these right-wing rallies for more than a year, and I'm really surprised to see you presenting yourself as a young progressive up-and-comer. It's really not what I would have expected. So, I think you're bullshitting me with this whole thing.
Right.
And he's like, immediately goes to, I'll sue you, I'll get you fired. Who do you work for again? I'm totally getting you fired. I've been recording all of this.
Wow.
You're fucked, basically. And
totally fucked.
That is right out of the playbook. I mean, they're picking up this strategy somewhere. I'm not saying that Jordan Peterson is telling all of his weird minions to follow this strategy of suing people who don't portray them as they wish to be portrayed at any given moment. But clearly it's out there,
right?
In their in the waters that they swim in, and it's kind of a tell, right? Like, their idea of free speech is you say what we want said or else,
right?
Because this example with the kid that I just gave, I mean, I know he was an alt-right activist. I knew his purpose was to, essentially try to recruit people with sort of deceptive tactics into his movement by misrepresenting himself.
Right.
And
right.
his idea of what a good interview would have been, and I don't know if any other reporters who were there bit on this, but I know it happens all the time. These people use fake names, and they come up with different PR strategies ahead of their events, hoping to get national press. His idea of a good interview would be, I passed on a pack of lies from him,
right.
And that's simply not what free speech was for. Free speech is for so we can have honest discussions, and advance an understanding based on factual information.
Right.
So the thread that you see with these, Nazis using their legal threats and Jordan Peterson using his to protect his professional reputation, whatever that is that it does go back to this sort of like patriarchal dominant idea of what I say is free speech. What you say is slander, unless you're echoing what I say. And that's simply not free speech. That is totalitarian propaganda.
Right.
Well, I think that speaks to what Mariana said the other day, which is fascists have very slippery tactics and they're very adaptable to whatever is popular at the moment. Like Barry Weiss likes to call herself a liberal, and that's a neat rhetorical trick because also, like, in addition to wanting their ideas spread, they want to be liked and respected. And, you know, it's like the same thing as Peter Thiel, who sued Gawker out of existence because they clowned on him constantly. Granted, they gave him a reason when they outed him, so it would look a little better on his end. But
if the Saudis knew, I wouldn't get money.
Like they don't want to just be able to talk. They want to be in mainstream platforms, and they want to be liked and respected, and they can't handle it when people speak against them.
Yeah. You know, I think actually Nick Denton, the former Gawker owner, is pretty convincing when he talks about how the outing wasn't really an outing. Especially in his peer group, Thiel's peer group, and that the real motivations for the lawsuit probably had more to do with their coverage of the businesses that he funded.
Oh yeah,
that was negative.
He is a cold-blooded killer. I promise you, he doesn't care at all about, like, you know, socialized homophobia or
and
whatever.
Just in varying context of the conversation, he's figuratively speaking a cold-eyed killer.
As far as we know,
Figurative, as far as we know. I mean, there's a lot of legitimate questions to ask there.
Cold blood. I mean, that's also a thing he likes.
Yeah, blood is an interest.
Ice cold refrigerated blood.
Ice cold refrigerated blood.
Corey, did you see this Data and Society heat map of the Alternative Influence Network on YouTube?
Do you have it up?
Yeah, we'll put it up.
I did. I haven't had the chance to dig into it. A number of people sent it to me saying, look, it's everything you've said, which is nice to see, but it also doesn't put it at the top of my reading pile because it's like, well, I already know it. But what did you learn from it?
Well, to be honest, I'm only looking at it. It's funny to see how big of a hub Sargon of Akkad is.
He really has some staying power.
But also,
although I think it's because he's getting connected with UKIP. He's actually like becoming a UKIP figure in the UK.
There's some names I haven't heard of. Like, I don't know who Andy Worski is.
I don't know who that
I've never heard that name before. But Stefan Molyneux is also the other one. So,
right.
I mean, what I find most interesting, cut away for a little bit, Jamie. I got another thing to put up there. Is that Ben Shapiro, Rubin, and Crowder have been freaking out because they're on it, listed very closely to people like Stefan Molyneux. So Ben Shapiro writes, so now we've got a voxing of the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon study that connects me with Richard Spencer. Well done, as always. Yes.
Doesn't this also... Well, I mean, actually, Corey, tee off on that first, and there's something else I want to
There's one more here.
Okay,
we got Dave Rubin. They all got mad because Ezra Klein tweeted it out. It's funny how Ezra
Dave Rubin's still doing this?
Yeah, do you want to read that one?
Hey Dave, at Ezra Klein, want to explain to me how a gay, married, pro-choice, pro-pot, against death penalty, for reforming prison/drug sentencing is part of the reactionary right? You know what's so funny about this trope now is I actually think not that any of these, fascists would go to the mat for these issues, but actually what's very funny to me is in today's political environment, there's probably any number of highly reactionary, anything to overt white supremacist people who actually probably come down on the so-called left side of all of these issues, right? Like drugs should be legalized. People are over incarcerated.
Some of these are so easy just to say, right? Like, I'm against the death penalty.
Yeah, I mean, also like
prisons.
Marriage equality and anti-death penalty and pro-pot are basically like, and I would say even pro-choice amongst a certain subset. Like, those are not the new dividing line with sort of like the right and left. I think for like under 40 or under 35 or whatever is not like it's. I mean, there's obviously still religious right wingers, but it's more like, well, yeah, I mean, I support gay marriage, but I think we should have a white ethno-state, which is not included in this dumb Dave Rubin tweet.
None of those are terribly redistributionary either.
Of course.
He's ditched the healthcare stuff.
Right. This is just I mean, that's the other way. It's just libertarian, whatever. And this is also another reason why it's very, very tricky to get into alliances with those people. But Corey, you were going to say, in terms of this stat and how it's validated?
Oh, yeah. Well, I finally am looking at this heat map. And I don't recognize who some of these as well, like Kraut NT and Bunty King.
Yeah, I don't know most of these
Computing
folks.
for, I mean, I don't want to advertise stuff that's
Right.
probably just funneling people into
Right.
some, hellish sort of Nazi spiral. But many of these I do, and they're, it's good to see people do this work, but it's sort of also like stuff that you can figure out just by watching these folks.
It's like following your own algorithms. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and the way that the other shows that they recommend, I mean, it just sort of, it's confirmation of stuff that not just myself, but people, many guests on your show, the whole crew have been saying for, a couple of years. And hopefully what this does, this kind of research, is convince the sort of mainstream press, and by that I mean, the press that feels it has to be neutral regarding the alt-right still, because they're still out there, that the people who are presenting themselves as classical liberals or just simply liberals, and yet echoing alt-right arguments, shouldn't be taken at face value.
Right.
That's been my main message to friends in the media who are working at those kind of outfits, because it can be hard. I mean, to tie it back to what we were talking about before, not everyone is fortunate enough, and I've made quite a bit of sport about Ezra Klein over the years, but not everybody is fortunate enough, like your buddy from Vox, to work for someone who will receive a legal threat like that and respond appropriately, by which I mean laugh it off and go back to doing your work. A lot of times, those kind of threats do have chilling effects on speech.
Right.
And, the people that need to be convinced that there are bad faith actors associated with the alt-right or with overlaps in terms of audience with the alt-right, who present themselves as something other than what they are. And I hope these kind of investigations and sort of the quantified approach, where you actually get a nice, easily referenced infographic at the end, convinces people who don't yet get it. Although I think most of your listeners do.
Yeah, I think so. I also, go ahead.
Well, here's the thing. Nazis historically have used liberal values that they do not believe in a bad faith way to advance themselves within a liberal society. So maybe I struggle with this myself, but maybe there is a case for deplatforming the farthest of the far right, like actual neo-Nazis.
Definitely.
Our friend Brandon Jordan made a good documentary about the anti-fascist movement, kind of connecting it up through history. And like when Hitler was rising to power, like Nazis had their rallies out in the open and drew tons of people and bolstered their cause that way. So the question then becomes, obviously the people we're dealing with now in America are a bunch of, LARPing edgelords, but at what point is it a good idea to intervene with them having a platform?
That's the question. I think there have been some misfires, but for the most part, the Antifa deplatforming strategy seems to have worked. I mean, remember a couple of months ago when Richard Spencer was like, can't raise money anymore. And you've had Milo out there whining about how, woe is Milo.
Yeah, if nothing else, it costs them tons and tons of
And
money.
that's the part that I support. Yeah,
Plus,
that's why
a lot of these rallies where they say, oh, our free speech is being suppressed, they're not just there to talk. They're there to beat up liberals and people of color and anti-fascist activists.
Well, that's the point I try to stress whenever I'm on a sort of mainstream show and they ask about these subjects, because it's what I've seen repeatedly, that, these aren't free speech rallies. They're rallies designed to provoke or incite violence. And just because you call it a free speech rally and wave an American flag and co-opt all this symbolism and language and essentially appropriate the cultural context of American patriotism for fascistic ends, it does seem to fool a number of people. So you do have to address them on the terms that they present, unfortunately, even if it's easier for some of us to see through than others.
Corey, and I also just, the only other thing I want, and we got to get to your movie pick in a second, and I guess we'll get to the trashing of Bloomberg and all later. Maybe this is, at this moment, probably more important than a guy who's preparing to waste a huge amount of money on sort of warmed over ought campaign. I kind of hope he does it, frankly. But
can I say this about Michael Bloomberg? I tried to look up in prep how many times he's announced a potential president. And it's one of those questions. There are so many results, it's impossible to Google it.
Right.
I'm
thinking long and hard.
You probably have to go back to the 80s to find the time when Michael Bloomberg was not announcing his intention to run for
That sounds
president.
about right, actually.
It's a little, and nobody what's really, it just shows you what money can get you. It can get you taken seriously by people who otherwise would have the sense to ignore you.
Right. What's this, Matt?
This is Bloomberg. Do you want to just talk about the I do her thing with Michael Bloomberg?
I just don't even. Oh, right. So I get, also Bloomberg, and this actually came up when he first ran for mayor. There's like a litany of, basically just, gross comments at Bloomberg LLC, including, I think one time he pointed at a pregnant woman and said, "Kill it," as one of the allegations, one of the things that somebody said he said. And then also in
he also said great number 16 as a reference to all the women getting pregnant at his workplace.
And then the other woman he spoke to and he said, he said, "I do her." So there's also just this other part. And, again, we're a little tight on time, but it was really funny that his big New York Times sort of, I might run for president, was essentially like, I will run as a Democrat and I'll defend stop and frisk, and they're too mean to the bankers, and Charlie Rose got a raw deal.
We have to point out, though,
welcome to 2020.
With regarding the I do her statement.
Yeah, what's the context for that?
He said so of some of the things about the comments about the woman's pregnancy, he says he left a voicemail saying, "I didn't say it, but if I said it, I didn't mean it." And then the article goes on. This is in The Atlantic. What Bloomberg reportedly did concede is that he had said of Garrison and other women, "I do her." In making the concession, however, he insisted that he believed that to do someone meant merely to, quote, have a personal relationship with them.
Wow.
Maybe it's like Michael Scott, and he was just trying to make these women feel better about themselves because they were getting fat.
No, I think there's some other quote. There's some other Bloomberg quotes that would undermine that theory.
I find that more offensive than the sort of vulgarity.
Yeah,
right?
I have to say, it's
the
like,
idea that we're supposed to believe that is more offensive.
Yeah, that's the thing. I guess that's kind of what I was suggesting earlier. Like, to be honest, it's like, I think like it would be dishonest if most men didn't acknowledge, like, yeah, I made a boorish comment, and if he said that and said, like, look, sorry, learned, moving on, versus like some type of nonsense.
I do her,
ludicrous,
which means I would get coffee with her a couple times a month.
I'd like to have some tea, talk about her career prospects. I don't know why I'm still doing Jordan Peterson, but it's just ridiculous. It's like, it's nonsense. I mean, I don't understand, like, just like have the room for humility.
Don't you think Bloomberg is really into Jordan Peterson, though? I mean,
I think Jordan Peterson cries too much for Bloomberg. I think Bloomberg keeps it a little bit tighter.
I like how postmodern they all get, though, when confronted with some shit that they said that's pretty hard to mistake. Like,
they're pretty.
That depends on what your definition of is.
What does do mean?
Said. That was Bill Clinton's vintage. Like, depends what your definition of is.
Also, it's one last thing I want to throw in about Bloomberg is his news company killed a major story about corruption in the Chinese government in order to protect the business expansion into China. And the reporters who were working on this story, this was a few years ago, wound up leaving the company and moving to the New York Times, which has forever colored Bloomberg in a negative light in the eyes of many journalists, and rightfully so. And it also calls into question how he runs his company. And if you don't think that Republicans would dig in to Bloomberg's sundry conflicts of interest that he would have coming into office and be all over that emoluments angle, since we all know what that means now, I think it's silly to think that they wouldn't. And moreover, they'd probably do a better job of it than the Democrats have when it comes to Trump, even though Trump's, are evidently more corrupt. So I'll just say that.
No, I think that's
bad
true.
idea. Bad idea for 100,000 different reasons.
Bad idea, but you know what? If a couple of consultants want to get rich and we can definitively have somebody like this get crushed in a Democratic primary, I'm not opposed to it. And also, I want to say, too, I know some people have anxiety about him running as an independent. And the only thing that I will say positive about Mike Bloomberg is I don't think he wants to be responsible for Donald Trump getting reelected. And I think that is why he's talking about doing this as a Democrat. And number two, he's not going to get any traction this politics has no appeal to anybody who isn't on the Upper West Side, or not even that, forget it, potentially the Upper East Side, Westchester County, and a handful of other suburbs, maybe some of the suburbs of Philly. That could be tricky, but this is going to be the inverse of a grassroots campaign. There'll be all the consultants and money and brand positioning in the world, but it's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah, but he was invited to speak at the DNC last time around.
That's their move. I mean, that was, and I actually think I think that move in and of itself, as part of just a get under Trump's skin strategy, was not terrible. But obviously it reflected the broader just sort of weakness of Democratic message.
Do you not think the leadership of the Democratic Party would side with Bloomberg over a Bernie?
But I don't.
Would they be more subtle about it, maybe, and get Kamala Harris or Cory Booker?
I definitely think they're at a point where, to the extent that stuff matters, their move for a more centrist candidate from the establishment is absolutely going to be behind a Kamala Harris and a Cory Booker instead of a Michael Bloomberg. It isn't. He's not.
They want to let some steam out of the left.
Yeah, that would be a disaster. I mean, what is the rationale for a 70-something plutocrat who not only is not good on all of these things that are increasingly important to Democratic voters, he has stop and frisk, women's rights, banks. He is overtly hostile on
guns, though.
I mean, I think guns can be matched in rhetorical jousts with a Cory Booker or Kamala Harris. And there will be, however this shakes out, there will be an actual authentic option. Hopefully Bernie, but it could also be Elizabeth Warren. So I don't see it.
Wow.
Corey, we've got a minute. What movie should we watch?
Okay, I actually have 3 recommendations.
Oh, wow.
2 are still in theaters. They might have come up on your show.
Okay.
They definitely deserve segments. Either on mine or Majority Report or something. Death of Stalin could still be out there.
Great movie.
Armando Iannucci.
So good.
Awesome. Sorry to Bother You. Also fantastic.
We've talked about this and did a whole segment on it on TMBS.
You did? Oh, yeah. I'm sorry I missed it. I'll go back and
it's
listen
fine.
to it.
Yeah, but it's definitely a good movie.
But my recommendation is something that came out in 2004, which I realize is ancient history. It means a lot of people probably haven't seen it, but there's this whole publicity campaign around Crazy Rich Asians as some kind of groundbreaking representation thing. I want to recommend a movie that is not necessarily so classist in its representation of Asian characters. It's called Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle.
That's a fun movie.
I just rewatched it with my wife.
Does it hold up?
I think last week. Okay. Yes, I think that
Yes.
most of the humor most of the humor holds up. There's some stuff that you go, oh yeah, this wouldn't fly anymore. But for the most part, it's just, a fantastic stoner movie. The treatment of the built-in product placement, also genius. Apart from serving as the plot device, it comes in at the very end in a line that is perfectly delivered by John Cho. And I'm gonna butcher the line. I believe it must have been those delicious burgers. And because their whole not to well, it's a spoiler, but
No spoilers.
at the end, everything works out all right through a miraculous turn of events, and everybody gets what they want. And the line that I hadn't noticed in previous viewings has to do with the magic power of the burgers, which certainly made White Castle really happy. But it's the je ne sais quoi with which it's delivered, with this subtlest of smirks. Even if you don't like the rest of the movie, or you think it's stupid, stoner comedy, which it certainly is, you have to admire John Cho's delivery. I mean, I think it's a greatest of all time, sort of like "Here's looking at you, kid" kind of line.
Corey Pein, thanks as always, my man. Live, work, 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 die. Journey to the Savage Heart of Silicon Valley. Buy the book before it becomes a successful show that we all write and perform on. And then become a patron at News from Nowhere with Corey. Great podcast, very insightful. Corey, thanks as always, man.
Thanks a lot. It's fun.
All right. It's gonna be a little bit truncated. I can't go super long today, but we are going to get to the fun half. Become a member of the Majority Report today. Majority.fm/become a member. That's how this show happens. Become a patron of the Michael Brooks Show. Michael Brooks Show, all the content you can get there as a patron is broken down at patreon.com/TMBS. Do that. Jamie.
Yeah, so this week on the Antifada, we released our episode yesterday. We are joined by writer David Cleon to talk about what, if anything, the left can take from the whole Russia story. Mm-hmm. We drag on everyone's favorite Hasbro hack, Barry Weiss, including in song. We talk about the elections. We talk about David's own journey to the left. And Sean and I get a divorce twice, so...
Oh, wow.
Check it out. Also, we're probably going to unlock our History as a Weapon #1 on historical materialism soon, because I think it's really good, and it's a good little sampling of what's available to you if you become a member at patreon.com/theantifada.
Matthew.
Yeah, Literary Hangover. We zoomed past 100 subs yesterday because people really want to hear me read this Hope Leslie. So
that's a good idea.
I actually read for 2.5 hours last night, which it's work to narrate a book like that.
Yeah.
Like that is I
would imagine.
My vocal cords are feeling good. They feel like, when you haven't worked out for months and then you really get after it. That's where I'm at today. But it went really well, and it's I'm really enjoying it. So I think I might do that every 50 patrons, is do a new book.
Smart.
Patreon.com/literary hangover. Check that out. Also, we did the Scarlet Letter that released on Saturday. Check that out. It's a good episode. If you haven't checked it out yet, it's not just me and Alex this time. We have 3 people. And as we all know, when you add a third person to a podcast, the conversation, I think, loosens up quite a bit.
I think that reflects the Griscom edition on TMBS.
To end, we have... Jimmy Reefer Cake and Adam Rainstopper. I think we're just going to play that.
Okay, great. We'll play it out. Cool.
This is called Kavanaugh Piss Off.
How long is the song?
2 minutes and 45 seconds.
All right. I am going to go do something. No, not and that sounded really bad. I'm not trying to diss. I just
Yeah, don't diss these guys.
It's no diss. All right, let me. You know what? We'll do some La Poupée so I can hear some of it. I can't hear anything.
When he was young, he got drunk and tried to rape a girl. Now he's a grown Republican who wants to rape the world. He's not clear, wake up to a bowling rover's way. Susan Collins, show us now how you are bought and paid. The Constitution's violated, right to freedom broken. Owners free to rape us, prohibit us from smoking marijuana privately when we are done with work. Kavanaugh said test them all, cause he's a jerk. Constitution guarantees us privacy. So in order to have a job, we should not have to be. They want to test my meat, that do instead. If they can come with me, and dump it on them. Piss off, Kavanaugh. Dump it on them. Kavanaugh wants to use the law to try to bring Clinton down. Now he's been nominated by Trump the fascist clown. With every binder full of women that says behave. Kavanaugh's calling every number you say. When Obama was the president, he had no right to choose. His nominations to the court were all guaranteed to lose. Now when Trump he nominates a rapist corporate scum, will it set him fight him, or will it let him run? Piss off, Kavanaugh. Piss off, Kavanaugh wants to use the law to try to bring Clinton down. Now he's been nominated by Trump the fascist clown. With every binder full of women that says behave. Kavanaugh's calling every number you say. He's not clear when it comes the holy rover's way. Susan Collins, show it now how you were bought and paid. The Constitution violated, right to freedom broken. Owners free to rape us, prohibit us from smoking. Ah, piss off. Ah, Kavanaugh. Ah, piss off. Piss off, piss off, piss off. Piss off, piss off. Piss off, piss off. Piss off. Piss off, Kavanaugh.
Welcome back. We're in the fun half. I like this. What was that? Is that Adam Rainstopper? Is the new?
Yeah, it looks like
Collaborator?
the new collaborator with Jimmy Reefercake is Adam Rainstar. But they all have these names like a sort of plain first name and then a sort of compound word.
Compound second name. Let's see. You are calling from a 717 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from? 717.
Hey, Matt.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
Hear me?
Now I can hear you.
Hey, I just, oh, okay. All right. It's Vinny from Pennsylvania.
Hey.
I just wanted to call in and throw some shade at some regional politicians, if I can.
That's some who?
Some regional politicians.
Why don't you stick to one?
Yeah.
Well, scumbag Scott Wagner.
I don't know who is
primarily
that.
what I had in mind anyways.
Who is that guy?
He is a local industrialist running for Pennsylvania governor.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think we played a clip of him. Yeah. So real quick, what's on your mind about him?
I hate the guy.
Oh, he's a bad dude. All right, man. Thanks for the call. You're calling from a 408 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from? 408. Are you there? 408. And that's going once and going twice. You're calling from a 321 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from? 321. Are you there?
Oh, sorry. I think that's me.
Yes, that's you.
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I wanted to talk about I don't know if you covered this, it was like a month ago, and it just sort of like made me upset when I learned about it. Like last Friday I'm in Arizona, I'm from Tucson, and during the teachers' strikes, they sort of, the state government kind of conceded like not as much money as was asked for to get teachers raises, and it was kind of like also they cobbled it together from other funds from like a lot of emergency services. So like if an emergency comes up, teachers' pay it'll dry up again. And also I think part of it was they didn't necessarily fund things for like school infrastructure or other non-teacher workers at schools.
I have to admit, I'm
janitors.
flying a little blind on this. So that there was a teacher strike, and so the money is coming to teachers by depriving other things. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, it was like Doug Ducey and the sort of Republican-led legislature sort of filled out. They said like, yes, we got. I'm also kind of a little fuzzy on the details because I kind of forgot. I'm not looking at anything right now that's double checking it, but
let me look into that a little bit because unfortunately, if you don't know all the details, I don't know anything. Do you guys know anything on that, on the follow up on that? All right, yeah. So why don't you call back when you have just a little bit more, and then we can. I mean, it sounds important. It's just I don't think any of us have enough to go off of right now.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I'll do that.
All right, thanks a lot. All right, let's do some clips here. So Tony Blair is a interesting example of a lot of things. So first, this is a guy who's constantly undermining Jeremy Corbyn as leader of the Labour Party. And this is a guy who, in his historical context with the global rise of third way politics, which is dominant, particularly in the late 1990s, Bill Clinton, Enrique Cardozo, Massimo De Lema, Gerhard Schroeder, Thabo Mbeki, and but most prominently Bill Clinton and Tony Blair were sort of associated with this essentially corporatization of social democratic and liberal politics. Now, there's some people in this political movement who did these moves because they were responding to a mass change in the global economy and the conditions they were in. It doesn't mean that I agree with the moves or think it was the right move, but that's clearly a different position to be operating from. Some really believed in a particular type of third way politics, and they sort of seem like historical fossils almost, because it's really not having to do with anything today. If you're Tony Blair, on one hand, he's trying to move to the front line, back to the front line of UK politics, where he is almost universally loathed, primarily because of his role in the invasion of Iraq. He actually was fairly popular otherwise, though he always was at odds with the left of the Labour Party. But while he's simultaneously warning about populism and drawing all sorts of false and ludicrous false equivalencies between left and right populism and putting xenophobia in the same category as critique of oligarchy and the obvious social democratic policies that Jeremy Corbyn is putting forward, he, and this is, at least in Italy, overlaps with his ongoing relationships with some of the most despotic regimes in the planet, in this case, Azerbaijan. Tony Blair was in Italy recently having a productive meeting with the leader of the Northern League, Italy's deputy prime minister, a fascistic leader, and they were talking about a controversial oil pipeline that Tony Blair is lobbying for. So this is an example of obviously a certain type of oligarchic elite, a totally amoral and immoral presence in global politics. And this is Tony Blair talking with The Economist about how the UK should relate to Steve Bannon.
You guys came under attack for was having Steve Bannon as one of your guests, I think, in America. My view is you've got to engage with the people who disagree with you. And you've got to be prepared to go out and argue your case and listen to them and build bridges to them.
Can I ask the audience who here thinks that we made a mistake in inviting Steve Bannon? I know the people who really hated the idea probably didn't come. Stick your hand up if you think we made a mistake.
Right.
Okay, they all stayed away. They think you're right, Tony.
So here's the issue. Nasreen Malik, who's a really good columnist for The Guardian, wrote a piece about this a couple weeks ago, and she talked about the parallel of people actually making peace with military dictatorships, I believe in the Sudan, where I think her family is from, and the regime which had literally killed members of people's family, relatives, people close to them, and those same people wanting to be accommodated by the new regime for both reasons of obvious fear and self-preservation, but also because of just a sort of capitulation to power, even a power that had personally murdered people in your life or put you in prison or tortured you. And she drew an analogy between that and this kind of like very weird liberal centrist attachment to indulge, in her words, Steve Bannon. And I've made this point before. I think on one hand, of course, Steve Bannon needed to be given platforms. We need to understand what this guy's about because he is the sort of prime propagandist of global fascism. You need to understand how he's appealing to people, what his strategies are, and we need not be intimidated by him. Absolutely, the right message and formula and mobilization can defeat all of him and his ilk. But that is different than this sort of phony, we need to hear what he has to say. Anybody can hear what this guy has to say. It's not terribly demanding intellectually. It's not terribly interesting. Relative to other people in his orbit, he's read a few books. He clearly loves the attention. And we know where he's coming from. We even know specifically all of the disingenuous rhetorical maneuvers he makes when he's denying the various bigotries of the movement he promotes. He has been given endless media exposure, and unless you sat down to destroy him, Marlo Stern actually did this in the Daily Beast a couple weeks ago, and he did it by spending a column being like, wait a second, you're talking about elites and you have an oligarch cabinet? Oligarch is my word, but he pointed out the relative wealth and privilege of Donald Trump and Betsy DeVos and people with trust funds running this type of agenda. And Steve Bannon got angry and he had nothing to say. And this sort of thing of everything from the Errol Morris movie that's coming out about him to people sort of sitting him on a couch and pretending that we're dealing with some profound, dangerous thinker is ludicrous. We're dealing with a dangerous propagandist and a very damaged person who has really bad intentions for the world, but not some profound figure that needs to be dealt with and engaged with. We understand what he's saying. Now it's time to defeat him.
Yeah, I like what Nasreen Malik said when she tweeted out that piece on what indulging Bannon really is about. Not free speech or exposing bad ideas, but liberal narcissism.
Right.
And there's a slippage that happens whenever they talk about this, whether it's Fareed Zakaria or whoever. They act as if Bannon has popular legitimacy, like people.
He's a profoundly unpopular figure.
Yeah, exactly. And that shows that. Right. In a meritocratic democracy or whatever, that would be fine. Or basically what the unbalance is because there's people in elite circles who think Bannon has interesting things to talk about.
Right.
And that's the problem. We're in an oligarchic system that leans towards right-wing fascism, basically.
Yeah. Would Tony Blair say the same thing about, I don't know, Yanis Varoufakis? Maybe.
No.
Maybe not. Probably not.
Well, he hasn't. Right?
Yeah.
So that's what we can judge it
and
by.
like I think this is one more example of how the neoliberal center, whatever you want to call it, hates the left more than it hates the right. And when they tell us, you know, you need to cooperate with us to defeat the far right, it's totally disingenuous because they would not do the same thing for us, even though we are the ones who actually know how to defeat the right. So.
Well, and imagine if Jeremy Corbyn was saying we need to build bridges to somebody like Steve Bannon, right?
And of course, Jeremy Corbyn has never said anything remotely approaching that because Jeremy Corbyn, and I think people have identified some areas that are more analogous to mishaps in how, say, a politician might speak about race in a way that is sloppy but not ill-intentioned. And I think what's interesting in the UK is I think it's both. There is some actual anti-Semitism present in politics in the UK that is very dissimilar to America in the sense more broadly spread out, and some of it is on the left, although some of it is certainly, coming from the Tories. And the real the foregrounding of the cynical motive of using this to delegitimize Jeremy Corbyn is that it's being used by people who don't care about anti-Semitism per se, as long as you support a right stance on Israel, by which I mean a right-wing oppressive stance on Israel. And Jeremy Corbyn, I think, has been responsive to the actual issues there and has been an actual robust figure overall against various forms of bigotry. Whereas, these other figures are obviously not. So, yes, we have Tony Blair drawing a ludicrous false equivalency between safeguarding things like the NHS and holding bankers accountable for their criminality with the conspiracies and bigotries of the xenophobic far right. And now, of course, Bannon should be at the Economist conference, and, Jeremy Corbyn's a dangerous radical. It shows the ball pretty obviously there.
And this is one reason why I'm not sure that Bloomberg wouldn't run as an independent, right? Because I don't know that he cares that much about defeating Trump, or maybe he does, but he cares more that this, social democratic wave or whatever is happening in America right now gets defeated.
I also think, I'm also just speculating. Well, I guess part of my calculus is that it's not unlikely that I think it's possible Democrats will nominate a candidate like Bernie Sanders, and that would change the calculus of somebody like Michael Bloomberg. But I think it's also very likely that they will nominate somebody that he wouldn't have a fundamental problem with, frankly. And also, I do think another part of it, I am going to still give him the credit. I don't think he wants to be responsible for electing Trump. I don't know if he's at the same level of depravity as Tony Blair, to be honest with you. But I also think he's looking at, I think from an ego perspective, does someone like Michael Bloomberg, who's not a stupid guy, does he want to spend $100 million and get 2% of the national vote? I think that's another big calculus, because they're going to go out and the pollsters and the strategists are going to try to paint him the most rosy picture possible because there's a lot of money that can be made. But again, he's not an idiot, and there is going to be no popular uprising of support for Michael Bloomberg, right? That ain't out there. But I take your point. I think if it's Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump, a lot of people will be exposed with what their actual concern and allegiance is.
Yeah, and I think Bloomberg's going to choose his bottom line above everything else.
It's possible for sure. Chris Lapaco, I'm under attack. YouTube decided to completely demonetize my whole channel yesterday. So far this year, I've been banned from streaming twice, had a video about white privilege shadow ban, and now this. I've crossed 6,000 subscribers, and the man is trying to keep me down. Since YouTube wants me starved, I'm going to put up a Patreon. I'll get a left is best tattooed on my left ass cheek when I reach 100 patrons. When I reach 1,000 patrons, I'll get a dong tattoo that says the hour of the pajama boy is over.
Jesus.
Cuck Nation, help a dude out. www.patreon.com/theexperiment.
If people notice we're playing less good music, it's because we've also been they're cracking down on us too. So YouTube is getting. This was always going to happen, right?
Yeah, it was always going to happen.
The honeymoon is over.
These things.
Honeymoon is over.
All this tremendous freedom created by these platforms until they create a monopoly and then just get you.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. And even the way they dinged us on the Michael Brooks Show YouTube channel.
Yeah, that's
insane.
the other thing.
We're just going to have to play all Jimmy Reefer Cake all the time.
I know one person that loves that idea. Dick Crab, isn't the alternative influence study problematic in that it includes the Twitch streamer and YouTube streamer Destiny as an influencer? Destiny actually debates these guys and shows how utterly vapid and ridiculous these arguments are. If Destiny's concluded in this, but the fact he's against all these fucks, isn't it shown? Doesn't that bring into question the methodology behind this? I don't know.
Not if you understand what it's showing, which is just relationships of who appears on which show.
Right. Obviously, though, that is where you need I don't know the writing around this. So if there's a summary that goes sort of a qualitative, to the quantitative, a write-up around it, then it would be fair to say, important to say, if this guy, I've never heard of this person, but if Destiny, if he is in the same loop as them, and it's because he's exposing them, obviously that should be noted in a write-up.
And I think if that is the case, this study is not going to be enough to damage that person's credibility. Like, I don't think if people don't know who Destiny is and all of a sudden they find out that it's on a heat map, people are going to think, oh, this alt-right or Destiny. I think people's real work shows up. So, like, I guess I'm just a bit... I don't really buy that as much of a criticism because I could imagine somebody like Steven Crowder saying, "Yes, see, just like Destiny." It's like you're not challenging Stefan Molyneux, right? Like
right.
I think we can understand the limitations of the methodology and still see it for a useful, illustration.
Yeah, I agree. You're calling from a 267 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Yeah, I'm having a problem with my car. It's the engine's making this really funny sound.
Okay.
It's going like, Randfall. Okay, I'm out of the office.
Okay.
Hey,
nicely done.
It's
What's on your mind?
It's Fran from Philadelphia here. So
hey,
I wanted to call about Kavanaugh and kind of like Catholic morality.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Did you grow up Catholic?
He went to this. I did not.
Okay.
So I went to this. Went to an institution that is founded by the same order that founded Georgetown Prep, namely that's the Jesuits. So I went somewhere where the motto was "Men for Others." Now that was almost 20 years ago, and I've had some time to sort of deconstruct how weird that phrase even is, because it just sets apart men from everybody else.
From the other.
But yeah, it's a strange phrase.
Yeah.
But anyway, I took this. I had to take this Catholic morality course, and not all of these institutions are created equal, I guess, because I never got the rule in my Catholic morality class of, if she screams, put your hand over her mouth. I must have been sick that day. But in any event, I did get a rule that is almost a Peterson-esque, 12 rules thing that is not totally unhelpful, even in a leftist toolbox from personal how you conduct yourself with women, and maybe even women could use this in conducting themselves. But that's in the context of lust, and you don't have to take it literally to mean that you lust when you violate this rule. But it was basically about rubbernecking, and it was your first look is your gift to God. It's kind of like saying thanks. The second look is God's gift to you, saying, I see that you recognize the greatness of my work. And then the third, that's lust.
Mm-hmm.
And, again, I don't take it literally to mean that, but it's an interesting rule because, there are lots of beautiful people out in the world, and you don't need to view them as these objects for your visual pleasure. And I feel like it's arbitrary yet functional.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And I just wanted to share that and say how absolutely disgusted I am that I went to the same type of institution, though I wouldn't even I wouldn't be able to afford to go there. Though where I went at a different part of the country, I don't think they ever turned away anybody based on income. I don't know what it's like at Georgetown Prep, but anyway, what a disgusting dirtbag. And he's going to burn in hell anyway. So, left is best. Take
left
care.
is best. Thanks for the call.
We are pro-lust here at the Majority Report, just for the record.
Lust. Sorry, that wasn't a good way to button that comment. Oh. Jesus Christ. In Brazil.
You have been the Edward R. Murrow of this whole process.
I just wanted a brief check-in on Brazil, where these issues are actually very much at stake as well. because there is a sense of certainly women voters coming to block Bolsonaro, who is the fascist candidate who leads in the polls. He's still recovering from being stabbed a couple of weeks ago. And the vote transfer has begun for Fernando Haddad, or Haddadi. I'll say Haddad because his background actually is Lebanese, which I didn't realize until recently. Former Sao Paulo mayor. He was Lula da Silva's vice presidential candidate. He is now running on the Worker Party platform, running against privatization, running on reversing cuts, running on a basic, obvious Keynesian social democratic program. And it is interesting, the Workers' Party really is of that. Lula actually pointed that out to Glenn Greenwald with regards to it being the largest left party in Latin America, but having strong parallels with the Labor Party and the German Social Democratic Party. Noam Chomsky is still at it. He went to visit Lula in prison and show his solidarity with the anti-democratic imprisonment and blocking of Lula and support for the Workers' Party. I think the woman translating for Noam is probably a current flame, because they're pretty close together there.
Get it?
Yeah, let's
still got it.
Noam looking very happy here. Let's play this clip.
How was your meeting with President Lula and what did you talk about?
Well, for one thing, it was a wonderful experience.
Foi uma experiência maravilhosa.
It's not every day that one meets one of the most significant figures of the 21st century.
Não é todo dia que se encontra uma figura extraordinária do século 21.
And the person who, by rights, should be the next president of Brazil.
E a pessoa que, por direito, deveria ser o próximo presidente do Brasil.
So we were very pleased to see that he remains lively, energetic, full of plans and programs, and optimistic about the future.
Nós ficamos felizes em ver que ele continua otimista, energético, com energia e muitos planos.
Okay, so there it is.
Looks good.
Solidarity with Brazil.
Doesn't look. I haven't seen him in a while, so it
looks perked up.
Oh, and people are telling me that is actually his wife, Aviva Chomsky. She is a
I thought Aviva Chomsky was his daughter.
Oh, whoops. Never mind.
Yeah.
My bad. His wife, a different Lady Chomsky. I'm sorry.
Different Lady Chomsky.
My lady Chomsky.
It's easy to get confused.
Good for them.
Good for them. Let's see. You're calling from an 847 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from? (847). Sorry. You're calling from a 612 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hello, is this me?
Yes, this is you.
This is me. This is Brenda.
Hi, Brenda. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. I'll put in a plug for your Discord again, as I usually do. Michael Brooks has a Discord, and it is really great. And I'm indicating how much I appreciate it because I feel safe to talk there, and it's a really supportive environment. It's a great Discord.
Thank you.
Okay, so sucking up, done.
Okay, now go.
Okay, now the part is in that net thing that you showed. It also comes up the name of Blair White, who is an anti-trans woman. And
okay, it's another person I never heard of.
Yeah, she's a trans woman, and she's infamous for making some really horrific statements about both women and particularly other trans women.
There's always one.
Yeah, and the thing I wanted to say about her is that I know, beyond a doubt, that in forums that I'm aware of, where generally trans women post, that she had progressive views, and then she disappeared for a while, and then she popped up again on YouTube. She made a YouTube video, her very first, and people can check this part out. she made a YouTube video where she just sort of mildly said, there's some instances where it is somewhat advantageous to be a woman. It's not all. The society is not absolutely misogynist. And she saw at that point that repaid her in views and things like that. And she saw how profitable it is to say those kinds of things. And from there, she made progressively more and more transphobic videos. And so, in some of the others, we have the same sort of trajectory from other people. She came out recently saying that she was told before an interview that, by the way, honey, we don't really hate you. This is what we say to in public, and she was told directly that they didn't have a problem with her. And these are famous people in that net that she was talking to, and they told her directly, we don't really hold anything against you. This is all. I'm adding here. This is all a shtick. This is what we do to get our viewers.
Right.
So a lot of this is simply that. It's simply opportunism.
Definitely.
They're doing
I'm suspect of that.
in order.
This is that to me. This is red flaggy all over the place.
Yeah. So I wanted to make that clear that some of these people, Andy Worski is a moron. I do know about him and some of the others. They are morons. And
right.
Sargon Avakad, you interviewed him. He's a moron.
I don't know if that was quite an interview.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. But the point is, he's not the brightest bulb in the box, but he did realize how profitable it is to say the kinds of things he says.
Definitely.
And that's what this is about.
I agree, 100%. And that's another problem. Like I didn't really have time with Corey because I think it's a very hard balance because I do think like in general and in intellectual discussion, you do like these are more concepts that have been distorted. So charity, in terms of not jumping to the worst conclusions about what people are saying, trying to hear people out, understanding, complexity of thought and so on is really important. And I think in not just in sort of broad intellectual life, but really across the board. But then conversely, there's a whole ecosystem of people where it's like you can't have a face value conversation about, say, Charles Murray. I mean, part of what's so toxic about, and we've said this so many times, but it's like, it's not just Sam Harris depicting him as a victim. It's coming on the show and saying, here's a guy who's just a data scientist when he is, in fact, a specific policy actor who's funded in very specific ways to forward very specific things. And, and I think on a more, on this YouTube level, you're right. Like, it's very obvious. I think that's actually a great example you give, right? Like, you put out a video that maybe sheds some needed nuance on a certain, issue, and that's fine. But then you get all the wrong sort of reward feedback, and then you go into, you become a hate speech monger, and and it's very profitable.
And the reason I can feel confident in this is because I know from trans-specific forums that she did used to express progressive ideals.
Right.
And obviously the money won out over this. And I want to end on a joke.
Please.
I love the Majority Report, and I also like to watch TYT. However, I watch the Majority Report so that I can know what Cenk Uygur's opinions will be later at 5 o'clock.
Oh, no cosign here, but appreciate the joke. Thank you, Brenda.
I wish he would rip off some of my opinions sometimes.
It's like, it's about capitalism, of course.
Would be nice.
Spelling that out sounds somewhat invidious, and we don't really have time to clean up the mess.
Right.
I feel like I need to apologize to Noam Chomsky's wife for utterly botching who she was earlier.
Okay.
Her name is Valeria Wasserman. She is a professional translator from Brazil.
Oh.
And they got married fairly recently. So Mazel Tov.
Mazel Tov, Noam and Valeria. Jonathan Armistead, Michael and Matt, kudos for doing the audio public domain books. Well, Matt's doing that. Once I'm on my feet financially, I'm going to become a patron and support the page financially. I'm doing my own project for Michael. I'm going through Barack Obama's Audacity of Hope audiobook, and I hope that he narrates, ripping out all the swear words to use as drops. And then he has a link, which we'll get to later. That actually sounds pretty funny. There are white folks, and then there are ignorant fuckers like you. I love Sarah Palin. Now that you and Jamie are back, I restate my point from yesterday. I agree with Jamie's salient critique within hip-hop as it relates to society. I reject the regressive politics of zero-sum game you expounded by referencing the Nicki and Cardi beef. It can be more mutually beneficial to collaborate and produce larger than life. Instead of being like Nicki and Cardi and Nicki, we should be more like Wu-Tang. Well, actually, there was a huge amount of conflict inside Wu-Tang. And rivalry is a part of hip-hop. I apologize.
Why is it always got to be girls? Says
It's
Cardi B.
Quite literally not. I mean, again, we literally can talk about like actual dead people, but again,
You know what? It was funny. It was funny when you made fun of me, but I know that I'm right, so it's fine.
The problem with Eminem is he didn't go after enough people. He went after like Britney Spears and stuff.
Yeah, Eminem should have gone after real hitters, and then he would. Yeah, but I mean, look, I don't know. Hip-hop wise, every single defining era has been defined by a major conflict going back to literally the murders in the 1990s.
There's a lot problematic in hip-hop.
Like there's a lot, right? Like I think that's also just
philosophy.
just it's sort of like cool Reaganomics with a huge amount of competition, and like can't just always sort of like inject outside values into a scene because we might want its politics
like
to conform.
Plenty of women rappers have talked about this. I researched it.
I know that. And I also know that the idea of separating competition from hip hop is a big stretch. Banks for the Robbers. From the 15-year struggle to save children from their abuseful and I don't know what this is. I'm sorry. What about sorry. David from Denver. I think what Jamie said earlier about neo-Nazis today just currently being LARPers is not quite accurate. I think that they obfuscate the fact most people in far-right groups today really are just straight-up genocidal. No joking or LARPing.
Oh, I mean, they certainly want genocide, but in terms of their effectiveness at getting it, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm on the fence either. I can see both points, and I think in different areas they're probably both relevant. But I do think fascism is more relevant in the halls of power than in the streets at this point, to me.
Look at I can't believe I'm forgetting his name, but the candidate for governor of Kansas, the Republican. I mean that guy. What's his name? We need to get his name. The very Chris Kobach. I mean that is a much more core, centrally threatening figure than idiots on the street. Been a member of around 2 years, and the Mario Kart sound drops are one of the best additions to the show. Thanks for all the hard work you do, blending the best reporting, thoughtful, insightful, and comedy into one of my favorite shows on the internet. Thank you. All right, let's take the final call from the day. You're calling from a 978 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from? Hello?
Michael, it's Glenn from Massachusetts.
Hey, Glenn, what's going on?
Hey, Mike.
Hey, what's on your mind?
Hey, good. I was just wondering, I know I've heard you praise the Dalai Lama before for identifying as being a Marxist and whatnot in his humanitarian efforts, but what do you make about these latest comments from him saying, Europe is for the Europeans, refugees should be taken temporarily but sent back to repair their own nations? Seems pretty uncharacteristic of him. I don't know.
I mean, look, I guess it's like maybe I need to bring back the Andrew Dice Lama character, but I think I guess I don't want to defend the statement. I will say in the past I have seen statements from him that are truncated, that are not exactly what he's saying, which is obviously pretty common. And I also think that he's been a force for a lot of really, really positive things. And obviously that statement rings in a very disturbing way. I mean, I don't know what else to say about it. I think that he also, paradoxically, in terms of his own politics and positioning, he's trying to keep a safe sort of zone for Tibetan refugees in India, which have been hosted. Basically, India has hosted a government in exile ever since the invasion of Tibet by the Chinese. And you have an increasingly cooperative relationship between India and China, which jeopardizes that status. So I'm not trying. Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to justify. If those are the comments and that's what he said, that should be discarded and criticized as any other leader who would say those things. But I think that he also is. He's a political figure, and he says a lot of great things, and he's been a force for some really great things, and he's also the head of an institution that really needs to have changes, right? I mean, on a number of levels. So that's my read on it, if that makes any sense.
True. Thanks, man.
Thanks for the call. Appreciate it. All right, final call of the day. Sorry I couldn't get to the rest of you. What is going on here? What's this new?
We just have some breaking news from 40 minutes ago, which is probably going to be the Friday news dump. Breaking news, Rod Rosenstein, the official who appointed Robert Mueller, once proposed secretly taping President Trump and removing him via the 25th Amendment.
Uh-oh. Wow.
Not good, Rod. I thought we were friends.
Good. I thought Rod and I were tight.
Good luck with that.
Let's see. Right. Stable. All right. Yes, we have the Noam Chomsky info. Spencer. Fuck yeah. Okay. Okay, the final IM of the day. Maybe I have to watch this. Noah from Kami, California. Did you guys see the latest Alex Jones interview on Values Entertainment, or whatever the fuck? I don't know who is worse, an unstable, suicidal Alex Jones or the absolutely moronic interviewer. What is a self-proclaimed centrist saying that Alex Jones does work? Proof that centrism is insane in the U.S. Viva la revolution. I haven't seen it. Maybe I will take a look. Anybody else seen that?
No.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We're back on Monday.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I guess somewhere the choice was made for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive between the 101